The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
And while we are deposing Marshall Miller, maybe we can depose Donald Trump about why he chose his personal lawyer to be the head of the DOJ. On January 6, 2026, the 5th anniversary of the insurrection, the White House launched a taxpayer-funded website that attempts to rewrite history about what happened on that day of infamy. On January 6, 2021, there was an insurrection at the United States Capitol that resulted in a police officer dying the next day, another 4 officers dying by suicide in the months thereafter, with at least 140 police officers being injured by the insurrectionists, with 15 of them requiring hospitalization. And I'm proud that we have 4 former officers as well as on-duty Capitol Hill police officers here today.
Hey gang, it's John Straight Into It. Jack Smith testified before Congress, methodically laying out the evidence of Trump's crimes under oath, while Trump responded with an unhinged social media rampage. The contrast between Smith's calm professionalism and Trump's meltdown could not have been more stark. Jack Smith did not just show up to Congress and make vague accusations. He came armed with the full weight of his investigation, years of work, thousands of documents, countless witness interviews, and a legal framework that he had constructed with painstaking care. He testified under oath that his team found evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump participated in criminal conduct related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Let those words sink in for a moment. Beyond a reasonable doubt, that is not a term prosecutors use lightly. That is the highest standard of proof in the American legal system.
Mr. Smith, I want to ask you about this website because the Trump administration is using taxpayer dollars to lie to the American people about the events leading up to and the events taking place on January 6, 2021. For example, this Trump propaganda site claims that the 2020 election was, quote, stolen. Mr. Smith, did your investigation uncover evidence sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump knew that his claim that the election was stolen was false?
Yes, it did.
And did your investigation uncover evidence sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump publicly claimed that the 2020 election was stolen from him while he privately acknowledged that he had lost the election?
Yes, we cited instances of that during in our case.
But yet here we see that on the 5th anniversary of the insurrection,
that is the standard required to convict someone and send them to prison. And Jack Smith, a career prosecutor with decades of experience, who has successfully prosecuted some of the most complex cases in American history, stood before Congress and declared that the evidence against Trump met that standard. He didn't hedge. He didn't equivocate. He didn't use careful legal language to obscure his meaning. He said it straight out, with the clarity and confidence of someone who knows exactly what he has and exactly what it means. Smith also made something else crystal clear in his testimony. The federal criminal cases against Trump were not dismissed because the evidence was weak. They were not dismissed because Trump was innocent. They were dismissed because Trump is the president, and the Department of Justice has a long-standing policy that sitting presidents cannot be prosecuted.
The Trump White House propaganda machine is still promoting the stolen election theory on this government webpage with a text box titled, quote, fraudulent election, stolen election certified, end quote. The site also has a subsection reading in part, quote, FBI entrapment operation exposed. Mr. Smith, did your investigation develop any evidence to support the allegation that the FBI entrapped insurrectionists into committing crimes on January 6th?
Our investigation revealed that Donald Trump is the person who caused January 6th, that it was foreseeable to him, and that he sought to exploit the violence.
This website also accuses you of being a, quote, Biden prosecutor who brought, quote, weaponized charges against Mr. Trump?
The dismissals were without prejudice, a legal term that means the cases can be refiled. They are not dead. They are not finished. They are simply paused, waiting for the moment when Trump is no longer protected by the shield of the presidency. Smith wanted everyone to understand that the legal sword hanging over Trump's head has not been withdrawn. It has merely been lowered, and it can be raised again the moment Trump leaves office. That is the reality that Trump is desperately trying to escape, and that is the reality that Jack Smith just made impossible to ignore. Trump's response to this testimony has been absolutely unhinged, even by his standards.
Mr. Smith, were you a Biden prosecutor who weaponized the Department of Justice against Donald Trump?
Absolutely not.
Did Attorney General Merrick Garland direct you to prosecute Trump because Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden in the presidential election?
No.
There are also allegations that President Trump was the victim of, quote, lawfare, and accusations that the Department of Justice lawyers who prosecuted Donald Trump used, quote, fabricated indictments and rigged show trials. Did you, Mr. Smith, or the men and women working on your team work to fabricate indictments or put on rigged show trials?
No, we secured indictments from grand juries, and we were prepared to prove our case in court beyond a reasonable doubt.
Did you use your appointment as special counsel to conduct a politically motivated witch hunt, scam investigation, and prosecution of Donald Trump?
He took to social media and started demanding that the deranged Jack Smith be prosecuted for perjury. He accused Smith of destroying the lives of many innocent people. He called Smith a criminal. He demanded investigations. He made threats. He ranted and raved like a man who knows that the walls are closing in and has no idea how to stop them. And the more unhinged Trump became, the more Smith's calm professional testimony stood out as the voice of reason and the rule of law. Trump looked like a man in a full-blown panic.
I did not. We followed the facts and we followed the law. Where that led us was to an indictment of an unprecedented criminal scheme to block the peaceful transfer of power.
And those indictments have been dismissed. Can they be rebrought or resurrected after Trump leaves office?
They were dismissed without prejudice.
So they can be refiled? And he can be prosecuted after he leaves office, is that correct?
I'm not going to speak to that. I can only speak to what we did, which was dismiss the case without prejudice.
All right. The website put out by the Trump White House on the anniversary of January 6th is nothing more than a pack of lies. It proves that Donald Trump is hell-bent on misusing taxpayer dollars in a feeble attempt to rewrite his criminal history and the history of what happened on January 6, 2021.
Lashing out at anyone who might hold him accountable. Smith looked like a prosecutor who had done his job and was simply explaining the facts to the American people. That contrast is everything. That contrast tells you everything you need to know about who is telling the truth and who is desperately trying to avoid accountability. But this testimony is about far more than just the legal cases against Trump. It is also about the broader threat to the rule of law that Trump represents. Because Smith testified not just about his investigation, but about what happened after the cases were dismissed. He described a Trump administration that has launched a revenge campaign against everyone who worked on his cases. Career prosecutors, FBI agents, support staff, all of them have been targeted for retaliation simply for doing their jobs. Trump has fired DOJ employees who worked with Smith. He has demanded investigations into prosecutors. He has threatened FBI agents. He has told his allies to come after Smith and his team. And Smith told Congress that he fully expects to be indicted by the Trump administration, that he expects to be investigated, that he expects to face retaliation. That's not paranoia. That's not speculation. That's the reality of what Trump is doing, and Jack Smith is refusing to stay silent about it. Now, let's be clear about what Smith actually found in his investigation. This was not a partisan witch hunt. This was a thorough, evidence-based investigation conducted by career prosecutors who followed the facts wherever they led. Smith's team reviewed thousands of pages of documents. They interviewed countless witnesses. They examined phone records, text messages, emails, and other communications. They looked at Trump's actions, his decisions, his words. And on the basis of that exhaustive investigation, they concluded that Trump had committed crimes related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election, crimes related to mishandling classified documents, crimes related to January 6th. These were not vague accusations. These were specific, detailed charges supported by evidence that met the highest legal standard. And Smith is willing to stake his reputation, his career, and his freedom on that conclusion. He testified under oath, knowing that if he was lying, he could be prosecuted for perjury. And he said what he said with total confidence. The legal significance of Smith's testimony cannot be overstated. He put on the record, in the most formal setting possible, that a grand jury had found probable cause to charge Trump with crimes, and that he, as the special counsel, had found evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that the evidence against Trump is not just sufficient to bring charges. It is sufficient to win a conviction. That's what beyond a reasonable doubt means. And Smith said that publicly, on the record, under oath. That's a massive statement. That's a statement that will echo through the legal system for years to come. And it's a statement that Trump cannot escape, no matter how loudly he screams about corruption and witch hunts. The evidence is there. The legal analysis is there, the testimony is there, and it's all on the record for everyone to see. The classified documents case that Smith brought is particularly significant because it involved Trump allegedly taking classified national defense information to Mar-a-Lago and refusing to return it when the government requested it. That's a serious crime under the Espionage Act. And Smith's investigation found evidence that Trump had committed that crime. The case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning it can be refiled once Trump leaves office. And Smith made clear in his testimony that the dismissal was purely a result of Trump's status as president, not because of any weakness in the evidence. So when Trump leaves office, whether in January 2029 or earlier, that case can come roaring back to life. And the same is true for the election interference case. Both federal cases are paused, not eliminated. Both can be refiled. Both can result in criminal trials and potential convictions. That's the sword hanging over Trump's head, and Jack Smith just made sure everyone knows it's still there. What's particularly striking about this whole situation is the contrast in demeanor between the two men at the center of it. Jack Smith sat before Congress, calm and collected, methodically explaining the legal reasoning behind his investigation. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make threats. He didn't attack anyone personally. He simply laid out the facts and the law with the precision of a master prosecutor. Meanwhile, Trump was on social media screaming about deranged prosecutors and demanding retribution. The contrast tells you everything about who is operating from a position of strength and who is operating from a position of panic. Smith has the law on his side. Trump has nothing but bluster and threats, and everyone watching could see the difference. The precedent that Trump is setting with his revenge campaign is genuinely dangerous for American democracy. If presidents can investigate and prosecute their political opponents, if they can use the Department of Justice as a weapon against anyone who holds them accountable, then the rule of law is dead. Prosecutors will be afraid to investigate powerful people. They'll be afraid to follow the evidence where it leads. They'll be afraid to do their jobs. And that's exactly what Trump wants. He wants prosecutors to be afraid. He wants them to know that if they go after him, he will destroy them. That's not how democracies work. That's how authoritarian regimes work. And Jack Smith is standing up to that authoritarian impulse, telling Congress and the American people that this is happening, that it's wrong, and that it must be stopped. The Georgia case adds another layer of complexity to Trump's legal exposure. That's a state-level case about Trump's attempts to overturn the Georgia election, and it is still pending. It has not been dismissed. It remains a live legal threat to Trump. And the key difference is that federal pardons do not apply to state crimes, and state governors cannot pardon federal crimes. So even if Trump tries to use his presidential power to protect himself from the federal cases, he cannot do the same with the Georgia case. That case will continue to move forward, and once Trump leaves office, he could face trial in Georgia without the protections of the presidency. The legal cloud over Trump is not disappearing, it's just shifting. And Jack Smith's testimony made sure everyone understands that. Smith's decision to testify publicly is also significant because it represents a departure from the normal practice of special counsels. Typically, special counsels complete their work and then disappear from public view. They don't go to Congress and testify about their investigations. They don't defend their work publicly. But Smith made a different choice. He chose to go public. He chose to defend his investigation. He chose to explain his reasoning. And he chose to warn Congress about what Trump is doing. That took courage. That took integrity. And that's the kind of leadership that we need to see from people in positions of authority. Smith could have stayed silent. He could have let Trump's revenge campaign proceed without comment, but he didn't. He stood up and spoke out. And he did it in the most formal setting available to him. And what Smith said about the evidence is genuinely devastating for Trump. Smith testified that the foundation of the charges lies entirely with President Trump and his actions. It's not that someone else did something and Trump got blamed. It's not that Trump was just a bystander. It's that Trump himself engaged in criminal conduct. Trump himself took actions. Trump himself made decisions. And those actions and decisions form the basis of the criminal charges. That's a direct refutation of Trump's claim that he did nothing wrong. Smith is saying under oath that Trump did do something wrong. He did engage in criminal conduct. And the evidence proves it. The documents that Smith's investigation produced are now part of the public record. Thousands of pages of documents, phone records, text messages, emails, and other evidence are available for anyone to see. That's not speculation. That's not opinion. That's hard evidence. And that evidence is going to be available for future prosecutors to use. When Trump leaves office, the next administration will have access to all of Smith's work. They'll have all of his evidence. They'll have all of his legal analysis, and they'll be able to move very quickly to refile charges and bring Trump to trial. Smith didn't just build a case against Trump. He built a case that can survive Trump's presidency and be used against him once he's out of office. That's a significant achievement, and it's one that Trump cannot undo, no matter how much he tries. The threats against Smith and his team are not just rhetoric. They are real, and they are happening right now. The Trump Justice Department has already fired multiple DOJ employees who worked with Smith. Trump has already demanded investigations into prosecutors. Trump has already targeted FBI agents. And Smith fully expects to be indicted himself once Trump's revenge campaign is fully operational. That's a stunning admission. A former special counsel, someone who was appointed to investigate the president, now expects to be prosecuted by that same president for doing his job. That's the state of American democracy in 2026. That's how far we have fallen. And Jack Smith is the one who is telling the American people that this is happening. But what makes Smith's testimony so powerful is not just what he said, but how he said it. He was calm, he was professional, he was measured. He didn't rant, he didn't rave, he didn't make threats. He just laid out the facts and the law, and he let the truth speak for itself. That's what the rule of law looks like. That's what justice looks like. And it stood in stark contrast to Trump's unhinged social media attacks. Smith looked like a prosecutor who had done his job and was simply explaining the facts. Trump looked like a man who was terrified of what those facts meant. And everyone watching could see the difference. The legal principle that Smith was defending is fundamental to American democracy. Prosecutors must be able to investigate powerful people without fear of retaliation. If they can't do that, then the rule of law is dead. Powerful people can do whatever they want without consequence. And that's exactly what Trump wants. He wants to be able to do whatever he wants without consequence. He wants prosecutors to be afraid to go after him. He wants the law to be something that only applies to ordinary people, not to powerful ones. And Jack Smith is standing up and saying, no, the law applies to everyone. It applies to presidents. It applies to former presidents. It applies to Donald Trump. And Smith's evidence proves that Trump committed crimes. The public nature of Smith's testimony also matters because it ensures that his words cannot be erased or forgotten. They are now part of the official record of Congress. They can be cited by future prosecutors. They can be used in future legal proceedings. They can be referenced by historians. Smith made sure that his testimony would be available for anyone to see, for anyone to use, for anyone to rely on. That's a strategic choice. It ensures that even if Trump tries to bury the evidence, it will still be there. It ensures that even if Trump tries to silence Smith, his words will still be heard. It ensures that the truth about Trump's crimes will not be lost to history. The question of what happens next is crucial. Trump will continue his revenge campaign. He will continue to go after Smith and his team. He will continue to use the DOJ as a weapon against his political opponents. But the clock is ticking. Every day that goes by is a day closer to Trump leaving office. And when that day comes, the legal reckoning will begin. The federal cases can be refiled, the Georgia case can move forward, and Trump could be facing serious criminal trials within months of leaving office. That's the reality that Trump is trying to escape. That's the reality that Jack Smith just made impossible to ignore. What Smith has done through his testimony is to ensure that the American people cannot claim ignorance when the legal reckoning comes. They cannot say they didn't know the evidence existed. They cannot say they didn't know the cases were strong. They cannot say they didn't know Trump committed crimes. Smith has made sure that everyone knows. He has laid it all out publicly, under oath, for the whole world to see. And now it's up to the American people to decide what to do with that information. Will they hold Trump accountable, or will they let him get away with it? Will they defend the rule of law, or will they allow it to be destroyed? Those are the questions that Smith's testimony has put before the country, and the answers will determine the future of American democracy. The impeachment dimension of this cannot be ignored either. House Democrats are already pursuing impeachment proceedings against Trump, and Smith's testimony provides a powerful boost to that effort. Here is a special counsel under oath testifying that he has evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump committed crimes. That's the kind of evidence that impeachment proceedings are built on. That's the kind of testimony that can convince Republicans to break ranks and support impeachment. Smith didn't just testify for the record. He testified to move the political needle. He testified to provide the evidence that Congress needs to act. And that's exactly what he did. Trump's campaign of retaliation against prosecutors and FBI agents is not just an attack on individuals. It's an attack on the institutions of American democracy. It's an attempt to make the DOJ and the FBI into political tools rather than independent law enforcement agencies. It's an attempt to ensure that no one ever investigates a president again. And if Trump succeeds, the consequences will be permanent. Future presidents will know that they can commit crimes without consequence because prosecutors will be too afraid to investigate. That's the authoritarian endgame. That's what Trump is trying to accomplish. And Jack Smith is standing in his way. The contrast between Smith and Trump also tells you something important about the state of American politics. Smith represents the old guard, the professionals who believe in the rule of law, who believe in evidence, who believe in justice. Trump represents something else entirely. He represents the rejection of all those values. He represents the belief that power is all that matters, that the law is just a weapon to be used against your enemies, that the truth is whatever you can convince people to believe. And that contrast is playing out in real time, right now, with the entire country watching. The outcome of this struggle will determine whether America remains a democracy or slides into something else entirely. The federal cases being dismissed without prejudice is a crucial legal detail that deserves more attention. Without prejudice means the door is open for future prosecution. It means the evidence is still there. It means the charges can still be filed. It means Trump is not in the clear. And Smith made sure everyone understood that. The cases were paused, not eliminated. The legal threat remains. The evidence remains. The ability to prosecute remains. And when Trump leaves office, that ability will become a reality. Trump is living on borrowed time, and Jack Smith just made sure everyone knows it. The Georgia case adds another dimension to this legal exposure that cannot be understated. Because Trump is facing state-level charges in Georgia, and those charges are not subject to federal pardon or presidential immunity, the Georgia case is a separate legal threat that will continue to exist regardless of what happens with the federal cases. And once Trump leaves office, he will have to face that case without the protections of the presidency. That means the Georgia case could result in a trial, a conviction, and a prison sentence that no federal pardon can erase. That's a real risk for Trump. And it's a risk that Jack Smith made sure everyone understands. Smith's testimony also serves as a roadmap for future prosecutors. He has shown how to investigate a sitting president. He has shown what evidence to look for. He has shown how to build a case. And that roadmap is now available for other prosecutors to follow. When Trump leaves office, prosecutors will have a blueprint for how to proceed. They will know what to look for. They will know how to build the case. They will know what standard they need to meet. And they will be able to move quickly because Smith has already done the heavy lifting. That's a significant advantage that Smith has provided to future prosecutors. And it's one that Trump cannot undo. The reaction of Trump's supporters to this testimony is also worth noting. They will believe whatever Trump tells them to believe. They will see Smith as corrupt. They will see the testimony as a witch hunt. They will see the evidence as fabricated. They will believe Trump's narrative regardless of what the facts say. And that's the tragedy of this situation. The truth doesn't matter to Trump's supporters. Only loyalty matters. Only defending Trump matters. The law doesn't matter. The evidence doesn't matter. Only Trump matters. And that's exactly the world that Trump wants to create. A world where truth is irrelevant, where the law is meaningless, where only power matters. And Jack Smith is fighting against that world, fighting for a world where truth matters, where the law matters, where evidence matters. The final thought that I want to leave you with is this. Jack Smith did something remarkable. He stood up to the most powerful person in the country and said, "No, you are not above the law. Yes, there is evidence against you. Yes, you will face consequences." He did it calmly, he did it professionally, he did it under oath, and he did it knowing that he could face retaliation, prosecution, and personal ruin as a result. That's courage. That's integrity. That's what the rule of law looks like. And it's a stark contrast to Trump's cowardly attempts to use his power to escape accountability. The contrast between the two men could not be more stark. One is fighting for the truth. The other is fighting to bury it. And right now, the truth is winning. That's the story of Jack Smith's testimony, and that's the story of where we are in this battle for the soul of American democracy. Trump is spiraling as Jack Smith's documented evidence and clear legal case move forward. The reckoning is coming. Smith is not backing down, and Trump should be very worried about what that means for the fight for American democracy.